Beginning January 1st, 2020, the recreational use of cannabis will be legal in the state of Illinois.
Available to stream now, my mini-doc dives into the history of Illinois legalization, starting with
January 1st, what should we expect? The biggest thing that we need people to understand is that January 1, in terms of the criminal justice system here in this state, is the end of prohibition.
See how Illinois missed its chance at real cannabis reform with key failures, including the fact that
the program includes regulation on possession limits.
So people can still be arrested for a possession.
And I want to highlight that in its first year of legalized recreational marijuana in the state of Illinois, they arrested 3 times as many black people for possession than any other race.
We've run into so much cannabis, we've run out of places to put it.
I have represented people and taken their cases through the court system who got charged with more serious crimes only because the police said that they smelled cannabis. And not because the police said you have illegal cannabis, or not because you have too much cannabis, or not because you're high on cannabis, but because I can smell it and that's it.
Attorney goes, he understands that he can't be smoking and his cannabis flower shouldn't be open. And I was like, I'd like to say for the record that I was not smoking and my flower was not open.
So that's where we're at right now in Illinois, and I hope it changes.
Start watching now at colememo.com/minidoc. Hello and welcome, everybody, to another live episode of the Cole Memo. In case you're listening to this after the fact and want to check out our lives, because it is an interactive show, you're able to call in, drop your comments. I'll respond as the show goes on. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, do it. colememo.com/YouTube, I think, is a quick way to get to our website. Specifically to the YouTube channel. Let me just double check that really quick. Yeah, colememo.com/YouTube if you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We got a lot of stories to cover today, so we're going to breeze right through them. We've got a lawsuit against Illinois State Police who seized legal cannabis. They had to bring back that cannabis and the cash that was involved in the whole transaction. So that's not something you see often. It's definitely not something you saw, well, I would say up until this year. You didn't see much of cops bringing the drugs back. We'll get to that, but first, do you have a real ID or do you have a fake ID? Somebody just dropped a comment and said, "Thanks, Cole. Hey, thank you for tuning in." Do you have a fake ID or do you have a real ID? Let's watch this short report to get the show started.
The Real ID deadline is less than 3 months away. Alexi Janulius doesn't want long lines and chaos over these IDs. So today we are clearing up confusion and telling you everything you need to know. Confusion over Real ID is real. Do you know what Real ID is?
No.
Maybe you're going to get it today?
I don't know.
What is Real ID?
I believe it replaces passport.
No.
I actually need to fly. I'm actually going to France this summer.
You don't need Real ID for international.
Oh, you don't?
But if we're keeping it real, the federal government has pushed the deadline back multiple times, and that may have added to some confusion. And that's why Illinois Secretary of State Alexi Janulius is speaking out to address misinformation and concerns over Real ID.
Demand for Real ID driver's licenses and state IDs will inevitably increase. What we don't want are crazy, unmanageable lines at our facilities.
Let's start with those who do not need Real ID, because Janulius says a vast majority of people will never need it. If you have a valid passport with you, you will not need Real ID whatsoever. But if you're someone who doesn't carry your passport everywhere you go, listen up. You will need Real ID to fly anywhere in the U.S. by May 7th. You'll also need Real ID to visit certain federal facilities, like a military base or federal courthouse, if you don't have your passport.
I don't want to discourage anyone from getting a Real ID, but before scheduling an appointment, please make sure that you'll need one.
Janulius says you do not need Real ID to show valid proof of citizenship, and you don't need Real ID to drive if you have a current, valid driver's license. Real ID is mainly for people who will be flying across the U.S., which is still a large number of people. So, how will the state handle the influx of people coming to the DMV before the May 7th deadline?
That's a great question. We're obviously concerned. That's why I stood here a year ago screaming from the rooftops and waiting until the last minute. If you need one, we'll guarantee headaches and heartaches at airports and wait times at our facilities.
Now, if you do need real ID, you will have to apply in person at an Illinois DMV. You can make an appointment at some facilities. You'll need to bring items like your birth certificate, social security card, and proof of residency. Illinois does have an interactive checklist to make sure you don't forget anything. We have posted it on our website, abc7chicago.com, and our news app. So much confusion about real ID. People in the line, they thought it was replacing passports. So it's good that we are hopefully telling people, and hopefully they're listening, heeding the warning. Don't wait until May 7th. Let's get all of the confusion rectified now so that you're not at the airport wanting to go on your girls' trip to Miami and you don't have real ID. I know, right?
Okay. May, is the
Yeah, so don't, get your real ID. Don't keep that fake ID that you have. Sorry, that's such a stupid joke. Did you get your real ID yet? Once again, you can call in the show now at colememo.com/live. You don't have to display your face. We're about to get to the main ticket story for today, which is a lawsuit against a police department for seizing cannabis. The police actually had to return the cannabis and the cash. We're also going to talk a little bit about the recent odor-proof cannabis container hearing, but in case you missed it, I wanted to watch this short report about the recent budget speech that Governor J.B. Pritzker gave. Let's check it out. Maybe? Yeah, here we go.
The governor warned lawmakers that things will be tight this year, but he presented a balanced budget that overcomes a previously projected $3 billion budget deficit. But the governor also had dire warnings about Washington. Governor J.B. Pritzker talking about a tight budget year ahead, but he spent a good part of his speech focusing on threats from the Trump administration.
I'm watching with a foreboding dread what is happening in our country right now.
The governor, who's expected to run for president, making frequent references to Nazi Germany as he criticized the president.
The authoritarian playbook is laid bare here. They point to a group of people who don't look like you and tell you to blame them for your problems.
Republicans left shocked.
Wow, this was a very political budget speech. Clearly, the governor is beginning his run for the presidential race.
The governor's budget calls for better access to higher education and allowing community colleges to offer four-year degrees in some areas. The governor also pushing for reducing the cost of prescription drug medication.
For us in the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, we want to make sure that we're prioritizing our needs. We want to make sure that these critical programs and critical services do get funded.
And if Chicago is hoping for additional funds, that seems unlikely.
There's no new money, though. And I think the answer is going to be no across the board to a lot of projects.
There will also be cuts to funding for undocumented immigrants. But it was the governor's frequent comments about Nazis that caught many by surprise.
And if we don't want to repeat history, then for God's sake, in this moment, we better be strong enough to learn from it.
This is a state budget address. We're here to deal with Illinois issues, and to take it off the rails at the end there the way he did, I mean, absolutely ridiculous.
All politics aside, this budget by most accounts is going to be a very difficult one that is very likely to undergo many changes before it is finally finished up later this spring.
And just before we get into the main ticket topics for today, I just want to mention that, one of the things that Governor Pritzker did not mention during his speech was any plan to address Illinois. We all know that Illinois has notoriously weak government ethics laws, right? So you can see I'm displaying a headline right now where Governor Pritzker has the headline for the Chicago Tribune, his Pritzker's budget a belt-tightener. And right below that, there's a senator being charged with bribery in a federal bribery. Let's see what the story is here. He's got it linked. New details emerge in bribery case against State Senator Emil Jones III. Sorry about the paywall here. Yeah, so notably, one of the things Governor Pritzker did not mention was any plans to reform or strengthen ethics laws in Illinois. You know, we desperately need some reform. And that is covered in my mini documentary, which I'll give a quick plug for, colememo.com/minidoc if you haven't seen it already. All right. It is time for our main ticket topics. I just want to say before we get into this that, once again, you can call into the show right now at colememo.com/live. You don't have to show your face. You can just literally call in. It's super easy to do. People have done it in the past. Just go to colememo.com live. Even if you're on a mobile device or on a computer, hit the button and you will be in the call and we can have a discussion. So let's talk about the lawsuit filed, and we're actually going to watch the lawyer explain why they filed the lawsuit. I've actually not watched this video in full yet, so it's going to be interesting to watch it. But like I said, the details of this case may sound familiar. So if you're tuning in just right now, we're about to cover a story where a lawsuit was filed against Illinois. It was actually a local police department because they illegally seized cannabis, ultimately brought it back. I'm about to show you video footage of them bringing back the cannabis and the cash involved. Something that you don't hear often about, right? You only usually hear about police taking drugs away from people. You don't hear about them bringing drugs back. So definitely a rare occurrence. Let's watch the footage here before we watch information about the lawsuit. And if you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're live right now, so if you comment below, we can display your comment as we discuss this subject matter. Let's watch this cop giving back cash, and then you'll notice the cops are bringing back in bags of cannabis. Something you don't usually see. Let's watch the video.
I hear you. He said, "You're doing that, right?" And he was like, "Yeah." And
Yeah,
said,
and
"Here's
look,
the
this is
cash."
where they're bringing all the bags in.
Okay,
But it's not. I don't show all of them, but that's like some of the stuff that they brought in.
He said, "We're gonna start bringing it in." So here they are. Oh,
Yep,
here you
and I'm
are
helping.
them.
That's the. Yep,
Is
that's
that-
the
you're
chief
smiling.
deputy. And that's my wife keeping the door open for us.
It's funny to see you smile and getting that shit out of the back of their car.
Did you hear what he said when he walked in?
No, I didn't.
Oh, that's Chief Deputy Ritter. He says this feels weird.
Oh, let's see. Yep, this feels weird.
Yeah, because he's bringing.
I'm sure it did feel weird. Police aren't used to bringing back drugs, but hey, when you seize a legal product, a federally legal product, that's exactly what happens. So if you noticed, you heard my voice in that. That's an episode that we had aired in the past. You can watch it right now. I'll have it linked in the show notes. What I realized today when I was preparing for the show, that I had only dropped that episode on YouTube. So I will also be dropping that episode on all streaming platforms so that you can tune in. Somebody commented on Instagram and said, "Illinois, what in the world? You had one job." Exactly. Legalize cannabis. And as the CRTA starts, actually, why don't we do this? This is a good little learning lesson before we watch the lawyer explain why they're filing this lawsuit. Let's look up CRTA Illinois law, which is the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. And I just want to show you the first words from the Illinois Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, to the point that somebody just said, you had one job, right? Legalize cannabis. And this is from the law that legalized cannabis. It's called the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. In the first words from the law, let's put this on the big screen so that everybody can see it. In the interest of allowing law enforcement to focus on violent and property crime and some other things, the General Assembly finds and declares that the use of cannabis should be legal for persons 21 years of age or older and should be taxed in a manner similar to alcohol. I want to just reiterate, in the interest of allowing law enforcement to focus on violence and property crime, the General Assembly found and declared that the use of cannabis should be legal. begs the question, why did they even show up to this shop? Why did they even try to take this product? They should be focused on violent and property crime. Looks like we got a comment in. How did they determine what they seized was hemp and not cannabis? So this is actually a good question here. Let's talk about that. And by the way, that question, whoops, my camera turned off. That question came in from Cannabis Critique. If you haven't watched them on YouTube yet, definitely check them out. So what's funny is they don't have a test currently. Law enforcement does not have a test, and they admit that. If you check out that interview, I'll have it in the show notes if you're watching it after. If you're watching this episode after the fact and you would like to see that episode, I'll have that entire episode linked in the show notes. What police end up saying in that episode, we've got it on camera, is that they don't have a way to quantify the Delta-9 levels, which, of course, to your point, that is how you would determine whether the cannabis that was seized was hemp or marijuana. So I just wanted to say that in case people don't know, all of this is cannabis. Cannabis is a term based in science. It's a botanical term. To bring you back to like 8th grade biology, you've got genus and species. So for humans, it's Homo sapien, Homo being the genus, sapien being the species. With cannabis, you've got Cannabis sativa, cannabis being the genus, sativa being the species. So with the Farm Bill in 2018, we created an arbitrary term called hemp. And hemp is any cannabis that has less than 0.3% Delta-9 by total volume, I believe is the language from the law. And so back to the question from our friend Cannabis Critique, they only were able to, he's really breaking out the high school biology. You can see that comment. He said, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. I'm trying to think of how I used to remember that. It was like King Phil. God, I can't remember the memory device that I used to use in order to remember that. But yes, you know your high school biology. So we're talking about cannabis, but the police do not currently, as they discuss in the episode, definitely check it out, have a way to quantify the levels of THC. They can just test for the presence of THC. For some reason, somebody called me out. I always want to say, instead of presence, I always want to say presence. I think I heard like a British person say that once on a newscast, like, the presence of smoke in the area. But anyways, the presence of THC. So they just tested whether or not there was THC. They did not test the levels of THC. The smoke shop owner showed certificates of analysis to prove that it was hemp. Ultimately, a lawyer that I've had on my show, which I have linked in the show notes for the episode if you check it out, called these police. I actually talked to that lawyer about this on the show and explained, look, what you're dealing with is hemp. It's federally legal. You might want to return it. And not shortly after, according to Bilal, which is the shop owner that we were just watching, shortly after that phone call was made, I believe not only was he released from holding, I'm doing this off the top of my memory, so definitely check out the episode for better details from his perspective, but they also brought those products back and the cash back. So yeah, Cannabis Critique, they had the certs on hand. He was just curious how these places operate, especially in smaller towns with overzealous police. Yes, exactly. I recently went to a smoke shop, and what you'll notice when they sell these products, there's usually like a stack of papers next to them, and that's for a case like this. If law enforcement comes in and tries to say, "Hey, you're selling marijuana," no, it's hemp. I am selling cannabis. I'm not selling marijuana. I'm selling hemp. Such a silly, arbitrary distinction here, but I love it because it's made things interesting. Just wanted to acknowledge some other comments. We are live right now. We're about to watch the lawyer that's representing the person that I had on my show talk about why they filed this lawsuit. Once again, I hadn't watched this video yet, so we're going to be watching it together. But I wanted to acknowledge some comments that were made in the Instagram live stream. Somebody said, we literally have people who have no knowledge of cannabis/hemp trying to regulate what they don't understand. Yeah, well said. You can comment below, and if you've noticed, I've been displaying my friend Cannabis Critique's comments. We can display that on screen for you. Also, if you haven't yet, please smash that like button, as the kids say. And you can call in live at colememo.com/live. You don't have to share your face if you don't want to, but if you got something to say on air, feel free to call in. Let's watch this lawyer explain why they filed this lawsuit against the East Dundee Police Department, and then we'll be moving on to the amazing subject of the odor-proof container. Fun stuff. I didn't even promote that in this episode, but we're going to talk about it. Let's watch this lawyer talk about why they filed the lawsuit.
The war on drugs was a very sad episode in American history. While it is called the war on drugs, what it really was about was a war to reinforce white supremacy, to repress black people, to repress minorities. And in initiating the war on drugs, police officers would engage in a variety of deceptive behaviors, from planting drugs on minorities, falsely accusing minorities of selling drugs. And even when there were people engaged in illegal activities selling drugs, they would work to amplify the charges, to give them excessive sentencing that they would never give to white people who were involved in the same activities, involved in the same crimes. And not only would police officers plant evidence, they would work to fabricate evidence. They would work to tamper evidence. And unfortunately, the war on drugs escalated the subjugation of minority communities. It escalated prison rates and false arrest rates, and it has a legacy of complete turmoil and destruction. And unfortunately, East Dundee Police Department decided to carry on this brutal legacy of the war on drugs when they fraudulently obtained a warrant to execute against a minority-owned business by the name of Smokehouse, owned by Bilal Husseini. Bilal Husseini, in his business, he was selling lawful hemp merchandise. He maintained certificates of analysis for his products, maintaining that they were less than 0.3 THC. They were at lawful levels of THC. But these police officers did not care. Consistent with the war on drugs and its fabrication of evidence, these officers went to...
I just wanted to pause it for a second and just let everybody know that I am not playing that music. This lawyer decided to put that on the backtrack. Just an observation I had. Sorry for pausing the video. Let's continue.
Consistent with the war on drugs and its fabrication of evidence, these officers went to fraudulently obtain a warrant. And in their warrant, they alleged that they saw Mr. Bilal Husseini selling illegal marijuana. No such observation was ever truthfully made, because Mr. Bilal Husseini has never sold illegal marijuana. He has always sold legal hemp, and he has always maintained certificates of analysis verifying the fact that all he sold was legal hemp. These police officers used testing methods that they knew could not adequately distinguish between hemp and marijuana, that could not adequately distinguish between legal hemp and illegal marijuana. But they used these tests on his products to fabricate evidence and to support the notion that he was actually selling illegal marijuana. They executed this warrant, sending at least 15 officers to his place of business, where they began confiscating various products. And not only his legal hemp, but CBD products that are sold at Walgreens, sold at Walmart, sold on the open market. It has even been lauded by Forbes magazine for their transparency.
I also thought that part of the case was super interesting. Not only did they, you could almost get why they would, right? You could almost get why they would seize the hemp, and we'll watch the rest of that video. There's just about a minute left, in a minute and 20 seconds or so. The hemp flower looks like marijuana. It looks like cannabis that we're used to seeing. So you could almost get that. But that is a detail that I found interesting. And once again, if you're just tuning in now, we'll have the link to that episode. I've interviewed the person that this lawyer is representing on the show in the past. I've actually got another episode with them and their partner lined up that I haven't released yet. But yeah, one of the things I found notable is that they not only took the products that you might say look like something that you found in a dispensary. They also took products that, according to Bilal, were clearly labeled as CBD. Let's continue watching the video, and we'll talk more after it's done.
In their ingredients. Even when Mr. Bilal Husseini presented them with certificates of analysis verifying the fact that this was all legal merchandise, these particular police officers did not care. They took his products, they seized his merchandise, and even after they indicated in their own reports that all signs point to this being legal hemp, they still decided to pursue criminal charges against him. They still decided to falsely arrest him and to seek to harm his business. Muhammad Law Center is announcing the filing of a lawsuit to hold these police officers responsible for this unlawful raid accountable. And we want to add, because this is very important, we have uncovered white-owned businesses in the same area selling the same exact merchandise as Bilal Husseini. But these white-owned businesses who are selling the same exact merchandise were never subjected to such an aggressive raid, were never had the owners of their business falsely arrested and placed in jail. Why is this the case? Because the war on drugs is not really a war on drugs. It is a war to suppress minorities. And that is what it is about, and that is what these police officers participated in. We will be holding these police officers accountable.
All right, so that was that. That was super interesting. Like I said, if you're just tuning in now, I have interviewed the person that lawyer was representing during the episode. We watched footage, and I'll play a little bit of it again for people that may have missed it earlier. In what you're about to see, you can see the police officers returning cash. So here they are returning cash. Got the video paused here, but you're about to see them also. Oh, I had the video paused. So here they are returning the cash. You can see the cash in his hand. He's giving it back to Bilal. And then here they are bringing in bags and bags of federally legal cannabis. It's just what it is. It is just what it is. Looks like we just got a comment in. I just want to reiterate, comment below. We can display your comment. Let's see what somebody said. If they're claiming race bias, then they need to stop using the term marijuana too. And I was waiting for somebody to say this. I completely agree with where you're coming from here. I tend to try to use the word cannabis because, again, it's based in science. It's not a term that has what many say is roots in racism, right? The word marijuana was, in many cases, purposefully used to make cannabis, or at least from what I understand, it was purposefully used to make cannabis sound scarier than it is, to make it sound like a Mexican word, if you will. And I think that's what our commenter means. They need to stop using the term marijuana. But I just want to remind people that that is the legal term. So we're talking about cannabis, but there are two arbitrary legal terms, and they are marijuana and they are hemp. So if you have more than 0.3% of THC by weight volume, it's the cannabis that we're talking about is marijuana under law. And if it has less than 0.3%, it is hemp. But it's all cannabis. So, but it's a great point that Mr. Adam brings up. If they're, I tend to agree, and that's why I tend to try to avoid the term. You can call into the show now by going to colememo.com/live. I'm curious to hear what you think. Comment below. We're going to be moving on to the odor-proof container, but I'm very curious what you all think about this lawsuit. So let's talk about the odor-proof container, shall we? Let's talk about it. I'll display on my screen right now. I believe I was one of the first to break the news. So I actually attended this hearing, which is why I'm going to be publishing an article with much more information. Let's see. We just got a comment. Do these spots sell Delta 8 stuff as well? I don't know about the specific spot that we were just discussing, whether they do or not. But typically, yes, these hemp shops will sell Delta 8. So, if that's something you're into, definitely you can find it there. The first place I always like to say I tried Delta 8 was in an Illinois dispensary. It was a grassroots product. We might even be able to find it because they were still selling it in some stores within the last year. Grassroots Delta 8 hemp vape pen. Like I said, when I went to a dispensary one time, they were like, hey man, and this is when I had my medical card. They were like, try out this Delta 8 stuff, man. It's going to be the new wave, man. They didn't really say it like that. Unfortunately, I may have to look it up on my phone here. I definitely have a picture of it. It had a BioTrack label on it. You can sell Delta 8, from what I understand. And fun fact, while we're pulling this up, yeah, let me send this to myself. I'll display it on screen. Fun fact, Delta 8 was actually first synthesized and I believe identified in Illinois. So if you look up Roger Adams, he was a researcher at the University of Illinois. Many credit him for being the first to identify the THC structure. I should actually say some credit him for identifying the structure of THC. Most give credit to this, I believe he's an Israeli person named like Mekalim or something like that. Somebody please comment below to correct me if I'm wrong. But Roger Adams, from what I know, and Google this, folks, he not only synthesized Delta 8 from CBD, but I believe he synthesized THC from CBD and was among the first to at least identify, I'm going off the top of my head here, I just want to reiterate one more time, that he was the first to identify the crystalline structure of THC. So some fun Illinois history for you, but real quick, I want to show you the Delta 8 product that I tried from Illinois dispensaries. I actually have a picture of it from the menu, and I have, like I said, another picture of it with that. Oh, here it is. Yeah, with the BioTrack sticker on it. So this is how I first tried Delta 8. Most people nowadays associate Delta 8 with hemp. But yeah, I remember first hearing about Delta 8 in the dispensary. I'll show one more picture here where you can actually see the BioTrack label on this Delta 8 product. So here you can see the BioTrack label, which most of you might be used to seeing. It looks like this was sold in Litchfield, Illinois by Grassroots Cannabis. And this is the Delta 8 vape. So yeah. That's at least where I first tried Delta 8, but typically speaking, to I think Cannabis Critique's original point, that they do usually, that's where you're going to find Delta 8 is in these smoke shops. Somebody else commented and said Illinois makes no distinction between hemp derived and cannabis. I agree, but again, not to be nitpicky here, but they make no distinction between hemp and marijuana. This is all cannabis. We've got hemp licensed under the Hemp Act, and then you've got cannabis licensed under the, I just did it because I'm used to calling it cannabis. You've got marijuana licensed under the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. These terms I'm throwing around are federal terms. They also apply to the state level. Anyways, Cannabis Critique said, that's what I was wondering, if that's legal with the hemp bill stuff or if it was legal before that. Yeah. I would say that, to your point, if that's legal with the hemp bill stuff or if it was legal before that, I feel like you started to notice a preponderance of it due to hemp. But yeah, it's sold in some dispensaries. I think even GTI still to this day sells Delta 8 edibles, not in the dispensary, but in smoke shops. Interesting stuff. Anyways, though, feel free to continue to drop your comments below if you haven't already. smash that like button, subscribe. You can also call in now at colememo.com/live if you have any thoughts you want to share. We're going to be talking about the breaking news from this week. Earlier this week, the Illinois Senate Criminal Law Committee approved Senate Bill 42, moving it to the full Senate for a vote. The vote was 7-3, 7 people voting for it, 3 people voting against it. No surprise here, maybe to some of you, the 3 people who voted against it were Republican. Come on, Republicans. You're supposed to be the party of freedom. Yeah, about that. Okay, so if it passes the Senate, the House would need to vote on it before it reaches Governor Pritzker's desk, where it would be up to him to sign or veto the bill. I just want to applaud the cannabis community for a moment, because I put out a call to action, and I just want to say, because it will be going to the House, we may have another call to action coming out soon regarding witness slips. So I just want to mention something. At the time of the hearing, which again, I'm going to be publishing an article with many more details that mainstream media, I personally have not seen any of these details that I've captured, discussed anywhere else but this article that I'm writing right now. When the hearing took place, here's a detail you haven't read anywhere. Well, at least I haven't read anywhere. I don't mean to paint with a broad brush. Maybe you've read it somewhere. But when the hearing took place, 338 witness slips were filed in support of the bill. That's you, cannabis community. That's you. And guess what? There were only 98 in opposition, 338 versus 98. And you guessed it, those 98 people were police. So good job, cannabis community. You did it. You participated in the process, and you showed that more people were supportive of removing the odor-proof language than were against it. Let's watch a news report on this, which really highlights an interesting detail that I noticed during the hearing. Before we do that, we got a comment here. Illinois dispensaries make no distinction between hemp and cannabis-derived products in the dispensary system. You can legally use hemp-derived products, distillate terpenes, to manufacture products. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, one of the things I've been saying on the show for a while, first of all, we published the variance that allows these cannabis companies to do that, to purchase hemp and to use it in their vapes and their edibles. They can only use it in infused products. So from what I understand, that includes vapes and edibles. That's why around 2018, 2019, if you were a medical patient, all of a sudden you started to see these like 4-to-1, 15-to-1, and all these heavy CBD products, because a variance was issued which allowed these operators to infuse hemp into their cannabis materials. And it's business smart. Hemp is a lot cheaper. You source your product at a low price rate, and then you sell it at that same fucking price rate. You get what I'm saying? Buy low, sell high. It's genius. These motherfuckers are genius. They're just selling hemp and in their dispenser. And to your point, they don't have to label it. Some do. For example, let me find an example. We just got examples today. Let's get another example to show on the screen. GTI hemp. So GTI not only makes hemp edibles, but they use hemp in their edibles that they sell in the dispensary. Oh, and of course, I'm probably not going to be able to find this, but if you look on the back of your Incredibles that you get from a dispensary, chances are, under the ingredients section, you're going to see hemp extract. And again, that is because they can do that. And in fact, GTI has a hemp field. Look at their this is another topic I covered. Look at their cultivation center in Chicagoland. I can't remember which one it is, but look at all their cultivation centers. You're going to notice there's like a field in the back, and that's hemp. They're growing it outdoors, and they're allowed to use it for infusion purposes. And as far as I know, they were still doing that this year. I visited another cultivator that's growing hemp outdoors. You can look this up as well. You can see satellite images. It's even in a blog post, or you can read about it on thecolememo.com. Nature's Grace and Wellness grows hemp. They have a huge hemp field. And I know people that have worked in that hemp field. And yeah, they use that hemp in their cannabis products. And to this listener's point, they don't have to label it. So, yeah. So, and they kind of said what I was saying. Dispensaries are selling hemp-derived products while the public thinks they are buying and paying a premium price to get cannabis products from the dispensary, or marijuana products, as they corrected themselves on. So somebody said they shouldn't get to use it at all. The variance is a problem for the consumer. This is not what the consumer thinks they're buying. I actually disagree with you on that point. I tend to disagree with you because it's cannabis. It's all cannabis. I know we've kind of reiterated this a few times now. And in fact, from what I understand, how do I say this without getting in trouble? Regulators have visited these fields that I'm referencing. They've tested the crops, and they found that they don't legally qualify as hemp. They are legally qualified as marijuana. They're above that 0.3% threshold. The way I look at it is there's no difference. I don't think they should have to label these products. You know, I don't know. Curious what you think about that. Call in colememo.com/live. Tell me why you think, because there's a few people saying, I think they have to be labeled properly between hemp or not. They don't. I know that some operators do, but I don't believe that part of the variance is, we've got it posted on my website. I might pull it up here in just a second. I don't believe the variance says you have to label it any certain way. So let's watch this. Keep those comments coming in. We got some good discussion. Let's watch this report on the odor-proof container. And I'm going to point something out that I know that myself and maybe one other person is talking about at this point. You may have seen me post about this on social media. Let's watch the report.
In Illinois, a bill moving through the state Senate could stop police from searching a vehicle based on the smell of burnt or raw cannabis for people 21 or older. According to Capitol News at Illinois, the bill would get rid of the state law that requires cannabis be transported in a vehicle in an odor-proof container. The Illinois Supreme Court made 2 rulings on this issue last year. The court says the smell of raw cannabis gives law enforcement probable cause for a search, but the smell of burnt cannabis does not. Senator Rachel Ventura says that means police will have to know the difference between the two.
On top of that, the smell of hemp smells the same as raw cannabis. And so
it's funny how the subject of hemp just keeps coming up. I'm going to roll this back just a little bit so that we can keep watching the report. We got comments coming in. Please keep them coming in. I'll acknowledge them in here in just a second. Let's finish up this report. Just about 20 seconds left on this report.
the smell of hemp smells the same as raw cannabis. And so they're now asking law enforcement to know the difference between hemp and raw cannabis in order to not violate someone's Fourth Amendment rights.
But law enforcement officials told lawmakers that officers are trained to smell the difference.
Okay, the bill passed out of committee as we discussed and now heads to the floor. Let's take a look at this cannabis container, which was brought into the hearing. Once again, I was here at the hearing. I'll be publishing more details about this here in the near future. A law enforcement officer brought this container in and said, hey, I know that somebody, aka Colt Preston, just testified that there's no such thing as an odor-proof container. I submit this container to you. Nobody can smell it in here, right? Well, he said something to the effect of, well, we went and purchased this from a dispensary, and this is proof that cannabis is sold in odor-proof containers. Okay, first of all, this cannabis container is not branded at all. Second of all, it looks like the label, they tried to pick it off. Third, if you take a close look at the label, it says something in farms, red raspberry gummies, 100 milligram. That doesn't look like gummies. So I don't know what dispensary this law enforcement officer went to buy a mislabeled product. But from what I understand, and industry workers, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't work in the industry, so I'm just these are some of the things I gathered. The cultivation center performs the labeling. They usually try to label it right. I have a good friend that used to work at a dispensary, and whenever they received products that were labeled incorrectly, they had to destroy those products. And I don't mean by loading it up in a bong and smoking it. They had to literally put there's a protocol for destruction of cannabis at dispensaries. They like, it depends maybe from dispensary to dispensary, but basically they have to like put the cannabis in a machine that blends it with like vinegar and cat litter or something like that to basically make the cannabis unusable. So somehow, if we are to believe what the law enforcement said, because why would they not tell the truth? They went and purchased this product, which got through 2 layers of scrutiny, for lack of better words, and was sold to a consumer mislabeled. Again, this says red raspberry gummies. Interesting. What do you all think about that? I personally asked to see the container while I was in the hearing. They didn't pass it my way, unfortunately. I feel like if they would have passed it my way, not only would I have been able to probably smell it if I really tried to, I could also have identified, like, what the fuck is going on here? And what some people have pointed out is that this isn't even a label that you'd see at a dispensary. Apparently, this is like an inventory label. So I just am really confused. Where did they get this product? They said they went to a dispensary. Well, I don't know about that. Seems the details definitely are confusing to me. So I've got another report that I want to watch that's super interesting. It actually includes one of the law enforcement officers that were there. I just wanted to stop and briefly reiterate a point that Senator Ventura said, who's the sponsor of this legislation. She said, look, not only are we expecting law enforcement, and we'll talk about this more here in a moment, we're expecting law enforcement to distinguish between raw cannabis and burnt cannabis. In other words, we're asking them to distinguish between unburnt and burnt cannabis. But we're also asking them to distinguish between hemp and marijuana, which she called cannabis. But again, these are the federal legal terms. Don't cancel me for using the federal legal terms. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Hemp and marijuana are both cannabis, and as such, they smell like cannabis. So, not only, as we covered earlier in the show, do police not have a way, at least today, or at least when they seized the product that we were talking about earlier, they didn't have a way to quantify the levels of THC using machinery, but apparently they're going to have to quantify those levels using a canine or their own nose. They have to be able to smell and go, oh yeah, that's hemp. That smells like hemp. No. That smells like marijuana. I can smell that the 0.3%, I can smell that the THC, the Delta 9 levels are higher than 0.3%. Hilarious. Okay, well, that's funny that hemp came back up, because let's get back to hemp. We were just talking about hemp and the variance that allows hemp to be sold in dispensaries, and somebody said, if it's not labeled with the albeit arbitrary distinction, thank you for acknowledging that. I always like to point that out. They say it's still deceiving to the consumer because the consumer is not being informed as to what they're buying. Like food, it needs to be labeled. Curious, how would you label it? Would you say these are hemp-derived cannabinoids? Like, what are you looking for? Because again, I don't mean to keep reiterating myself, but it's all cannabis, so like, I am honestly curious, what would make people feel better with regard to labeling these products? What do you think makes the most sense? If you want to call in, you can do that now, colememo.com/live. I'll say it again, you don't have to show your video. I feel like that holds some people back. If you haven't yet, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you're noticing people displaying comments on screen, if you're on YouTube, or I believe on Twitch, yeah, we're streaming on Twitch now. Whoa. You can comment, and I can actually display the comments on screen like I'm just about to do. So somebody says, if a licensed cultivator tests and has a batch that qualifies as hemp, you're saying they can package that and sell it at gas stations? No, that is not what I'm saying. And in fact, And in fact, I believe that would be illegal because there are, first of all, I would say all edibles that are sold in a dispensary do qualify as hemp because of that 0.3% threshold. I'll share a graphic here in just a second to make it make a little bit more sense if people still are not like following us. I know that this commenter understands, but some people may not still. And so let me find this graphic here from our friend Brian Box Brown. I'll share it on my screen right now. In my opinion, most edibles in a dispensary, most drinks will fit the definition of hemp. I'll wrap back around to your question here in a second, but this is what, for people to understand why I'm saying what I'm saying, this is the definition of hemp, the 0.3% THC by weight. So if you have a small amount of THC, that 0.3%, and then you put in the rest of the edible, mostly CBD, gelatin, sugar, cornstarch, other ingredients, the product qualifies as hemp. Now, to wrap back around to the question that was being asked, from what I understand, and again, I'll reiterate the question, it says if somebody that's licensed under the CRTA, that's what I'm assuming you're asking, has a batch that qualifies as hemp, they're asking, can they package that and sell it at a gas station, for example? And from what I understand, no, because the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act specifically prevents that, specifically has laws to or regulations to prevent what we call diversion. And that would be diversion because it's the idea that, yes, I understand it's hemp. Yes, they can legally purchase hemp from somebody that can sell it at a gas station. Once you put it into BioTrack or in the future Metric, once you bring it under that umbrella of the CRTA, it can't leave the umbrella of the CRTA. That's what I understand it to be. With that said, as I mentioned earlier, there are several licensed cultivators that are selling their products in gas stations and liquor stores. And I just mentioned, and I can display it on my screen here in a little bit, that I found Incredibles at my local smoke shop. I was like, what? Did a double take. I also saw the Tyson Bites. Yeah, let me send this image to myself so that you all can see it on screen. So, you know, they can do that. But again, I hope I answered your question. From what I understand, if it's under the CRTA, it can't leave the CRTA, if that makes sense. So if you stay outside of the CRTA, like Curaleaf, GTI, Wana, Cookies, I'm blanking on, there's many more people that are doing this. You can sell it wherever you want. So we're about to play this next report, which, like I said, features a clip from a law enforcement officer that was present during the hearings, but I just wanted to share this. Damn it, I clicked the wrong link. I wanted to share this, maybe. Ah, there it is. Okay, let's put this on screen. I went to my local smoke shop and I saw this. I was like, what? Check this out. Incredibles. You recognize that from your dispensary, don't you? What you will notice is that it says Delta 9 THC, Delta 8 THC, CBN, and THCP, which is wickety wild, yo. I'm not sure if any of you have ever tried THCP, but I plan to in the future. It's something that I have to like plan out though, because I typically have a pretty strong tolerance, and one of my friends does too, and they said they ate a 4 milligram THCP gummy, and they were high for 2 to 3 days. I said, where'd you buy that gummy? I'm going to go buy one. And I did. I bought like 3 of them. I haven't tried them yet, but like I said, I got to figure out, if you got to plan 2 days in advance, I got to figure out a good time to try these gummies. They're so potent that, you know, I want to do it at the right time, not at the wrong time. Is there ever a wrong time? That's a good question. So we'll get back to that report here in just a moment. Somebody said, my understanding is infusers can use hemp-derived cannabinoids, but they have to be labeled as such. GTI products from dispensaries has their CBN labeled as hemp-derived on the packaging. Yeah, that might be exactly what I was referring to earlier. Somebody sent me a picture, which I can't find right now. Super frustrating. But it's of, Incredibles from a dispensary. And on the back of the package, it clearly says that under the ingredients section, not on the BioTrack label, under the ingredients section, that they used hemp extract in the product. From what I recall, they didn't say that, it was the CBN. Most people put 2 and 2 together and assume that's the CBN. But again, back to my original point, I don't know that they're required to do that. I'd have to look at the variants. Maybe we can look at that at the end of the show. I can pull up the variants. So somebody said, Adam followed up and said, right, so everything sold at dispensaries would not be considered hemp by legal definition. Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. It gets a little murky though, because it's like if you get pulled over with an edible in Arkansas, an edible that you bought from Illinois, again, that edible, based on the definition of hemp, meets the definition of hemp because edibles usually have a lot of sugar and other ingredients. And so my answer is going to be yes, everything sold at dispensaries would not be considered hemp by legal definition. They are considered marijuana, I guess, in the state of Illinois. It's federally illegal and everything. But if you really tested it compared to all the other ingredients, I would say it probably would technically meet that definition. This is where rules get a little weird. This is where the rules and how they overlap get a little weird. And somebody said, Adam, I think you're correct because it says the state cares about what's in BioTrack. A licensed cultivator can sell under their hemp license as long as they never registered with BioTrack. I'm not sure about that. Because, for example, like this company, this company, River Bluff, they sell their hemp products, but they do it under River Bluff Collective. They do it under like a different business name from what I understand, a different like LLC. Kind of speaking out of my wheelhouse right now, but like if you really look into it, the people that hold the CRTA license for River Bluff is a different LLC, a different entity from the River Bluff Collective that actually sells products like these. I don't think you can buy drinks like this anymore. Unfortunately, they don't sell those were my favorite drinks. I've still got like 2 4-packs left. I'm holding on to them for dear life. Folks, if you can't read it right now on the screen, you can comment below and we can display your comment like I've been doing with people. Yeah, somebody said by legal definition, not by federal definition. Yeah, it gets real murky here. It gets real murky when we start talking about how these definitions play with each other. But let's watch this next report related to the odor-proof cannabis container. And let's listen to what law enforcement says and also the lawyer that represented plaintiffs in the Supreme Court case. Let's check this out.
The debate over police searching vehicles based on cannabis odor is heating up in Illinois. Lawmakers now discussing a bill that could change state law dictating how to transport the substance. Harrison Belsanti explains how it could impact drivers' privacy and the ability for law enforcement to search vehicles.
Right now in Illinois, if an officer smells cannabis coming from a car, that alone can be enough reason to conduct a search. But House Bill 42 aims to change that, stopping police from using odor as probable cause.
Jim Kychuk, executive director of the Illinois Sheriff's Association, says the bill could create new challenges for officers on the road.
Our concern is that when you remove odor proof, does that negate our ability to go ahead and search the vehicle based on an officer's detection of raw cannabis coming from the vehicle? And you can tell the difference from, through training and experience, the difference between raw and burnt.
Okay, let's stop it right there for just a moment. He just said, Jim Kychuk, right? Remember that name? He just said you can tell with training and experience the difference between raw and burnt cannabis. Let's watch Jim Kychuk almost 2 years ago on this same subject. Let's hear what he has to say.
You may very well run into a situation where not only does the owner of the vehicle or the driver of the vehicle have raw cannabis, but they also had burnt. So how are we supposed to make a distinction there?
So how are we supposed to make a distinction there? But he just said with training and experience, you can make the distinction. Why do you say that other thing in the past? I don't know. Maybe training has evolved. Maybe he said with training and experience, maybe with the experience of cannabis having been legal, I say in air quotes, they've figured out the difference between raw and burnt cannabis. I'll just say, and I like to make this joke, I've been studying this plant for years, and you could fool me. I think you could still fool me. Like if I go into a room, did we just burn cannabis in here, or did we just open a cannabis container? I've been trying to explain to some people for years, no, I didn't just smoke in this room. I was just rolling up a joint. To a layman, they don't fucking know the difference more often than not. I will say there is sometimes a distinct difference. You know, it's a lot more aromatic, I would say, when you burn it. But again, depending on the day, you put a blindfold on me and walk me into a room, I don't know. I don't know if I could detect burnt from unburnt cannabis. Also, I just want to say we're living in 2025. How does vaped cannabis play into this? Can they search on the smell of vaped cannabis? Because it wasn't burnt. It's not raw. These are some of the questions I asked in the testimony I gave the other day, which I will detail in an article that I'm about to release at colememo.com alongside other details that I've not even mentioned in this stream yet, and I've personally not seen reported in any media source yet. So stay tuned for that. Somebody on Instagram just commented, as a smoker, I can tell the difference because of the wrapper they smoked the cannabis in. Fair. You're saying if they like rolled a joint, you can tell because you can smell the paper in the air. Well, what if they smoked a bowl? I don't know. This is where it gets a little weird. So I just wanted to stop the reporting or the report there because on one hand, Mr. Kychek said in this report that police do have training and experience to tell the difference between raw and burnt cannabis. But in the past, before this got to the Supreme Court, he said, well, we might run into a situation where somebody has raw cannabis and burnt. How are we supposed to tell the difference? I don't know. I guess he figured it out. Let's watch the rest of the clip here.
And you can tell the difference from, through training and experience, the difference between raw and burnt.
In one Illinois case, the state Supreme Court ruled that burnt cannabis odor isn't enough for a search. But in People v. Molina, a case represented by Whiteside County Attorney James Murdas, it upheld searches based on raw cannabis odor, citing the odor-proof container law. Murdas, who handled 2 Illinois Supreme Court cases on the topic, argues the bill would fix legal inconsistencies.
Once cannabis was legalized, the odor of cannabis was the aroma of legality. It was the odor of something that's legal.
Supporters say this bill, sponsored and written by Illinois State Senator Rachel Ventura, aligns state law with the state Supreme Court decisions, preventing officers from relying on subjective odor assessments. Law enforcement says it could make it harder to stop illegal drug transport and impaired driving.
To remove this odor-proof container requirement, does that not open the door for that illicit market to continue to get bigger?
Harrison Belsanti, WQAD, News 8.
Great report. Good job, Harrison. That was an awesome report from WQAD 8, I think is what they said. Curious, what do the people think? Drop your comments below. I'll display them on screen. We can talk about it. Somebody on Instagram said, yes, sir, I can tell when they use a bowl as well. I've trained myself to this skill. So apparently other people are training themselves on the distinction between burnt and unburnt cannabis, but I don't know. One of the thoughts I just want to bring up, and this is, one of those details that I will expound upon further in the article that I'm about to publish at thecolememo.com. A canine expert actually came in to the hearing to testify. And again, when that container was displayed, I'll put it back on screen here. Let's display that container. They said, look, this is odor-proof. Nobody in here can smell it. I can't smell it. Nobody can smell it. So this is how you legally transport cannabis. You just get this mislabeled jar. I'm just trying to be funny. You just have a jar like this. Apparently this is the way you test it. I made the point, the police, well, let's start with the police. The police made the point that canines have 10,000 to 100,000 times stronger of a sense of smell than humans. Okay, so we can't smell it in the room, but did you bring a fucking dog in? Can the dog smell it? That question was actually asked, I believe a few times, but definitely at least one time by Senator Markley, I believe was his name. He asked, if you brought a dog in, could they detect cannabis in that container? And from what I recall, the law enforcement officer said, well, I'm going to have to give you like kind of a longer example to answer that question. And he went on to like explain, if you've got a candle lit, right? You got like a candle lit, and then you put the top on that candle. Let's pretend I've got an actual top. He said, the container will fill up with smoke, and eventually the smoke will seep out of the container. So he didn't really address the question, which is like, he sort of did. So based on what he said, if smells can always seep out, then is there such a thing as an odor-proof container when we're talking about dogs? Even humans. Because I've heard of people that have... This is the most powerful point. I'll finish my point really quick and then I'll return to what I feel is the most powerful point. So I have heard of people that have purchased cannabis from a dispensary, put the container in their center console or in their trunk. It's a hot summer day. They come back and their car smells like Cheech and Chong, just hotbox the car, right? That odor obviously seeped out of the jar, and that's why their car smells like cannabis. But let's talk about my most powerful example, and it's a question that I asked in my testimony. I wish I would have... I didn't ask, actually. I encouraged people to go to a dispensary. I wish I would have kind of done it like presidential debate style, like, hey, by a show of hands, who in the room has actually been to a dispensary? Anybody? And if somebody raised their hand... This is where it gets a little weird because I'm testifying. I don't think I can have like a back and forth with people. I maybe would have asked them, by a nod of your head, when you went to that dispensary, could you smell cannabis? Because personally, whenever I go to dispensaries and when people tell me about going to dispensaries in Illinois, they say, wow, it smelled like weed in there. It smelled like weed in there, bro. Yeah. And you know what? The weed comes pre-packaged. I used to think when I had a medical card back before legalization that like possibly perhaps people are in the back room like scooping weed into jars and stuff. No, that's not what happens. Not at the dispensary. The products all come pre-packaged, meaning that the reason you can smell those products is because they're not packaged in odor-proof containers, right? So very interesting hearing, and like I say, I have many more details that I noted because I was fortunate enough to be present for the hearing. There's a lot of wild shit that was said. Basically, one of the points that was covered in this report is that if we took away the police's ability to search and detain people and violate their Fourth Amendment right based on the smell of cannabis, then police would not be able to protect us from fentanyl and methamphetamine and cocaine. My question, okay, so you want to protect us from fentanyl, cocaine, and methamphetamine. And so in order to do that, you have to be able to search our vehicles if our car smells like marijuana. Just in case, right? Just in case. I just don't, my question is, why is it okay that cannabis consumers are, let's call it collateral damage in this continued war on drugs with regard to those substances? Why is that okay? Wild reason, but they actually used that as a reason. They said, look, if you don't allow us to search based on cannabis, and you heard it actually in one of these reports, if you don't allow us to search based on cannabis, we will not be able to stop some of these dangerous substances from coming in to the state of Illinois. Insanity. That's in my opinion, of course. I'm curious, what do you all think? about the odor-proof container. Somebody said, because the war on drugs is Jim Crow 2.0. Interesting thought. Interesting thought there. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. If you want to comment below, we can display your comments. Please, if you haven't, it looks like we got a comment that just came in. If you haven't already, smash that like button. It helps other people to see the show. If you're wondering why I keep saying that, first of all, people are tuning in as this show is live. But it also helps. It's like one of the best ways you can support the show, by just smashing that like button and subscribing. And if you're able to support the show monetarily, it is not free to do this. For example, I had to drive to Springfield. The platform that I'm streaming off of right now costs money. So you can either make a super chat here on YouTube, or you can also go to colememo.com/support and donate $1 if you have $1. If not, like I say, the best way to support the show is absolutely free. Share it with your friends, smash that like button, subscribe, comment. That definitely helps, because not only do I have content to bounce off of, but it also helps other people see the show. Somebody says the drug war is on the poor and minorities. Yeah. While non-minorities, aka white people like myself, use drugs at the same rate, the arrest rates are disproportionately impacting minorities and people that may not be as fortunate. So that is unfortunate. That is very unfortunate. Well, folks, not seeing any other comments come in. We haven't gotten any live callers today. I'll extend the invitation one more time. We're taking callers. You can call in at colememo.com/live. You can just do an audio call. You don't have to show your face if you don't want to. What do you think about the odor-proof container? Like I say, stay tuned. Going to be dropping an article at colememo.com with many more details that I've not seen reported anywhere else yet. I've been watching all the reporting come out, which has helped me, by the way, to strengthen my report, because they're like exact quotes, for example. Like while I'm in the hearing and typing, that shit's hard to get an exact quote. So I didn't want to try to butcher somebody's quote. So some reports have exact quotes out of the hearing, which were really helpful to add to my article. But like I say, there's a lot of details that I've not seen really reported anywhere, and I'm excited to drop that article. Definitely stay tuned for that. Folks, it's Friday. It is February 21st, if I haven't already said it. It's just about 5:30 p.m., which means it is an hour and 10 minutes past, depending on where you live. In Illinois, it's an hour and 10 minutes past. By that, I mean an hour and roughly 10 minutes ago, it was 4:20. If you're listening in from the I don't know what time zone 4:20. It was 4:20 somewhere just about 8 minutes ago. That's what I'm trying to say. Well, I hope you found value in this episode of the Cole Memo. We'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.
Beginning January 1st, 2020, the recreational use of cannabis will be legal in the state of Illinois.
Available to stream now, my mini-doc dives into the history of Illinois legalization, starting with
January 1st, what should we expect? The biggest thing that we need people to understand is that January 1, in terms of the criminal justice system here in this state, is the end of prohibition.
See how Illinois missed its chance at real cannabis reform with key failures, including the fact that
the program includes regulation on possession limits.
So people can still be arrested for a possession.
And I want to highlight that in its first year of legalized recreational marijuana in the state of Illinois, they arrested 3 times as many black people for possession than any other race.
We've run into so much cannabis, we've run out of places to put it.
I have represented people and taken their cases through the court system
who got charged with more serious crimes only because the police said that they smelled cannabis. And not because the police said you have illegal cannabis, or not because you have too much cannabis, or not because you're high on cannabis, but because I can smell it and that's it.
Attorney goes, he understands that he can't be smoking and his cannabis flower shouldn't be open. And I was like, I'd like to say for the record that I was not smoking and my flower was not open.
So that's where we're at right now in Illinois, and I hope it changes.
Start watching now at colememo.com/minidoc.